Sorry,
Yes.
we had muted the room.
Oh, okay. Start over. The Sustainability Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Okay, it's time for public comment. Do we have any public present to comment today?
Moving on to the approval of the March minutes. Does anybody have any comments on the March meeting minutes? Anybody like to make a motion?
Move that we accept the March meeting minutes. Those are 3 M's in a row. That's a 3 M.
I'll second.
3 M.
Great.
Thank you, Commissioner Conkle. Okay. I move that we approve the March meeting minutes then. And it's approved. Okay, on to our business. Do we need to do introductions again? Do we want to? We could maybe just do like really brief introductions. It's really great to see all the new faces here and be in the same room with you all. I guess I'll start. I'm Amy Wolkowinski, Vice Chair. I've been on the commission for just a few months. I'm a geologist and a carbon analyst, and I work at NAU.
Kristen Kokel. I've been on the commission since March of 2020, and I am a public health faculty at NAU.
Tom Hammy, this is my second meeting. I'm working with a solar company here in town.
Roger Skurlock, I'm a retired chemist, and this is my second meeting as well.
Noah Baker. I work as an AmeriCorps employee for the Flagstaff Fire Department as the Community Wildfire and Climate Risk Reduction Specialist. I just finished all my coursework for my master's at NAU in Climate Science and Solution. I'm also a geologist formerly.
Nice. I didn't know you were a CSS student.
Yeah, well, almost not anymore, I guess, you know.
Now I recognize your name now that you say that. Yeah, cool.
Name,
Yeah, I think I might have been working admissions when you applied.
okay.
Maybe not. Anyway, cool.
I'm Marissa Miller. I'm the Administrative Specialist for the Sustainability Office.
I'm Tia Hatton-Tenney, and I am the staff liaison to the Sustainability Commission. Been with the city for about a year now.
I'm Mary Ellen Metzger. I am a second-generation native Arizonan, and I'm a retired high school principal, and I've been on the commission since October.
That one. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Do you want to jump in really quick?
Sure. Hi, I'm Debbie Neiman. I am the Climate Action Section Director. Jenna Ortega, and work on the climate team, doing all sorts of fun resilience and engagement projects.
You think they look like that? It's so bright.
I can't say I'm doing that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, welcome. Next, we have McAllister Ranch. Invite commissioners to serve on the application review panel. Looks like Natalie is going to fill us in on what's going on here. Hand it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, hello, my name is Natalie Pearson. I work with the City of Flagstaff Sustainability Office as a new food systems coordinator. I just started on April 1st, but we're already doing so many great things as a team, and it's really exciting. One of which is the McAllister Ranch Urban Farm Incubator. Out of curiosity, how many of you have heard of this project already?
Tia sent it out.
Most folks, awesome. Well, just to provide a tiny bit of context, thanks to the hard work of many city staff and community members, a portion of the city-owned McAllister Ranch property, which is over by Public Works on Route 66, has been approved as an extension for the Sustainability Office's Urban Farm Incubator Program. And so for the past month, we've been performing outreach to invite members of the public to submit applications to license this space for regenerative urban agricultural, educational programming, community gardening space, and other associated activities related to agriculture. I can submit our website link if you'd like to learn more. But because you all are doing such amazing work on this commission, I would like to ask if one of you would like to serve on the review committee to evaluate applications for this urban farm incubator. And if you are interested, our time commitment will be approximately 4 to 7 hours of your time to review these applications and participate in a group meeting. We just decided to extend the deadline about 10 minutes ago, so our schedule is still in limbo as we adapt to make it easier for community members to submit applications. And so we will send some meeting times, but later this evening, but looking to potentially meet Monday the 13th, Tuesday, May 14th, or Wednesday, May 15th to look at these applications together and select an applicant. And so those 4 to 7 hours will include that meeting. It will include the review of those applications. We'll make sure all of these meetings are hybrid, so you can attend virtually or in person. And the committee can elect to host interviews for applicants if we decide that we would like to learn more about their plans for managing the ranch if selected. And so if you are interested, you can let me know now or send me an email no later than 5 p.m. on April 30th. So that we all have time to prepare everything together as a committee and set dates for a meeting based on everyone's availability. But yeah, thank you all for being on this committee, new members and old. We appreciate the time you take to boost sustainability efforts in our community. Do you all have any questions or anything else I can touch on?
I have a question.
Would you say the dates again that you might meet?
Yes, it would be the week of May 13th through the 17th, looking to meet on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of that week. So May 13th, 14th, or 15th, looking all to be around midday-ish.
I'm curious about what the general acreage is of the McAllister Ranch. What's the land that you were talking about?
Yes, great question. And so the available space to farm as part of the urban farm incubator is about 3 acres. The property itself is about 10 acres, but some of that is allocated to watershed restoration and flood management. Other parts of it are allocated to a future community garden space, pollinator garden habitat, future community centers as we restore the historic buildings on that space. There's a lot of beautiful potential for this area. A class at NEU, a permaculture graduate level class, created a whole proposal for what this site could look like. And on April 13th, we had a community day with almost 100 people where community members from across the city of Flagstaff and beyond came together to build up this space. We installed 6 raised beds for gardening in this season, and we prepared a like 45 by 45 foot space for in-ground growing crops as well for whoever's able to move into the space, and looking to eventually install rainwater harvesting and other means of permaculture, which is all really, really exciting.
Awesome, Natalie.
Yeah,
So
if
does
anyone,
know right now if they have the availability or interest?
I would be available and interested, but I would step back if there's like 3 other people more interested. Like somebody wants to step on my hands or something. I'll do that in a minute. You put my name down.
Okay, awesome.
thank you.
Commissioner
And what was your name again?
Mary Metzger, Metzger, as in the flying M, but not related.
Natalie, I can connect you both.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you so much. Do you all have any further questions or updates that I can share in regard to our new urban farm incubator space?
I don't have any updates or questions, but I have a comment. I'm so excited to see you in this position, Natalie. I'm lucky to have had the opportunity to work with you a lot at NAU and see you grow as a student, and you're already doing a great job. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Amy. We missed you at CSS, and everything you're doing is still creating ripples there. So we appreciated your work at CSS, and thank you for all the work you're doing now. And happy to have worked with you and to keep working with you.
Okay, let's move on to the regional plan update and clarification. Tia,
Yes.
fill us in.
Yeah, of course. Amy asked, and I wanted to provide just an update. I know, Genevieve provided a great overview of the importance of the regional plan. And at the last meeting, we had made a plan, but it didn't pan out. We just have, we received just further clarification. So first off, I just wanted to thank you all for your willingness to participate as a commission. And I apologize for any confusion on the back and forth. I just want to emphasize that this is a very important plan that really does help carry out our goals, such as in the carbon neutrality plan. And that you are invited and encouraged to participate during this phase. Although we did receive clarity that the Sustainability Commission will be asked for feedback in a future phase in the fall. I do want to reiterate and clarify that you are able to go to any of the chapter meetings that are occurring most weeks right now. And this is the building and drafting phase. And, when the commission comes in and provides feedback later on, it will already be in more of its final form. And yeah, your just, pulled from the regional planning website, your participation is extremely valuable, and I totally agree. And so, as a community member, your voice is very powerful. And so we would, encourage you to either attend these meetings to provide comments and or to review the chapters and submit a written comment, or you can even watch the meeting recordings and provide a written comment after the fact as well. So this is the website. You can sign up for the newsletter that has, comes out with reminders. It has the schedule for when those plan chapter drafts come out. So yeah, and then Jenny and I are available to answer any questions on that because I know there's been a lot of back and forth.
You just said that when it comes to the Sustainability Commission, it'll be in more of a final form, which is great and I appreciate. But hypothetically, what if we don't participate in the process until then, and then we get it at that point, and as a commission decide that there's something that we would like to change? Is it too far along in the process at that point, or what are your thoughts on that?
Hi, folks. Jenny Newman, Climate Action Section Director. No, so that is when the commission as a whole sees it, and this applies to all commissions of the city, that is during the, I believe, 60 or 90-day review process, right? And the idea is that there are changes, right? We have, the regional planning team has anticipated that there are changes now. And it's kind of hard, right now, they're just going chapter by chapter, right? They're really in that drafting phase. So if you are particularly interested in a specific topic, maybe it's transportation, maybe it's water, maybe it's natural resources. It's kind of nice because it's broken out in those spaces, right? So there's basically a meeting on every chapter. That this is really your time to kind of engage at that ground level. But there is no full and complete draft yet, and there really won't be until the summer. And so it is 100% expected that there will be suggested changes at the time during that review.
And when we do that review, it's going to be the complete regional plan that
Yes.
we're looking at?
Yes, so
Rather
it
than
will be
just
the complete draft.
the chapters.
Exactly.
State law relative to this, I've lived in several other towns in this state, including Prescott, by the way, and don't recall anybody doing a regional plan.
They probably did.
Maybe they didn't advertise.
It might depend on, yeah, the outreach process, but I do believe, most places in Arizona are actually voted on by the communities, which is very unique to Arizona, actually, and the state law.
Forward in the state.
Yes, we're very special.
We are very special.
I lived in Tucson, I got a call in Tucson, and I voted a lot in Tucson.
They might have called it the general plan for the
I
comprehensive.
don't remember ever voting on any point.
Ah. It's good to know.
Any other questions for Jenny? Okay. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is chair and possible vice chair elections. I'm not really sure how to run this. I guess, ask if anybody would like to nominate anybody for chair. Is anybody interested in nominating?
Does anybody want to be nominated?
Does anybody
No, it's never go that way.
want to be nominated for chair?
I have a lot of new folks, so if you want to jump.
Yeah.
right in.
Anybody interested?
Well, it sounds like everybody's kind of, I mean, October is the longest serving person, so.
She's been here a long time.
Yeah, Kristen's been here years.
I do not have the fan.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you've been doing some
You
pretty
should,
good vice
what
chair
a
role.
job, and we just heard validation. Telling us how fabulous you are and how you have a ripple effect. I think you're ready to do more rippling.
Yeah, well, I told Tia, this is how I end up as vice chair is because there was elections and nobody else. I was like, oh, I thought an experienced commissioner would be interested. It was, I think, my second month on the commission. But I've enjoyed it. I really like working with the commission. I'd be happy to be chair. And nobody else is clamoring to do it. Sure.
But I'd like to nominate Vice Chair Wolkowski for the chair position.
I second that nomination wholeheartedly.
Okay,
We just go by acclaim,
we
yes.
have a motion to, for Vice Chair Wolkowski to be chair. Let's have a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So it's official. I guess I'm Chair Wolkowski. And so now this is really weird. I remember sitting here when Kevin did this. We had to vote. Kevin had to do all this for himself, which was a little awkward. So let's move on to vice chair. Nominations. Does anybody have interest in vice chair?
So maybe for our new folks, we should talk about the roles of
Oh,
chair
that's
and
a
vice chair.
brilliant
I
idea.
mean, at least the vice chair.
Yes. Do you want to do that?
Maybe Tia can do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Because I don't really know.
Yes.
Yeah, the chair, helps set the agenda with me before each meeting. And then during the meeting, they help run the meeting, help decide what order to talk in, help us follow the agenda, make sure we're moving through items and sticking to the agenda, making the motions, and getting the votes. Yeah, those are the main things, leading the meeting and helping set those agendas and really setting the overall direction. And then the vice chair helps fill in the absence of the chair.
Should the vice chair have like a doctorate in chemistry?
Not
Maybe.
You would love it. Not required.
I think, I am so impressed with everyone I hear speak at these meetings and all. I'm a little overwhelmed, actually. I would prefer to be background until I get my feet under me in this commission. So I would like to decline any suggestion of that.
I'll volunteer. Since the vice chair is just the person who takes the place when you're not here. You are. All good. Always.
I may not
I
be,
can be of
but,
assistance to you anytime you need me.
excellent, excellent.
But there might be someone else that wants.
I think Mary Ellen, I think you would sound like you're very experienced at all this.
But I'm an experienced speaker, talk a lot, but that's about it.
Well,
I will second your.
yeah. Well, I make a motion to put Mary on, or Commissioner Metzger up for vice chair.
Second the motion.
Perfect.
I appreciate your trust.
Okay, well, let's have a vote on that. All in favor of Commissioner Metzger being vice chair? Aye. Yay.
Congratulations.
Movie's got volunteer, but if anybody want to volunteer, anybody steps back and there's one person.
It's gonna be
I know, you're gonna ripple and I'm gonna stand there and support you ripple.
okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And let's keep moving on because we have one agenda item, which we're coming to now, which is long. We are going to work on the equity assessment and neighborhood sustainability, the equity assessment of the neighborhood sustainability grant program, right? And Jenna is going to, along with Tia and Jenny, city staff, sustainability staff are going to lead us in this process. I don't know you two.
Just a bystander here.
Okay, okay.
You want to be on the commission? You have
We do. We do.
Just be here, I need to learn a
You
little
came to
bit.
the last meeting, didn't you? Okay, cool.
He's the guy that works with the city, works with environmental effects, energy things.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent. Okay.
Helps them to make it.
My name is Albert Ray, just an interested community member. I'm on the Equity Advisory Group. And I'm already on a couple commissions and some various nonprofit things, so
Cool.
can't recruit, but I'll come and at least, always put in 2 cents.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic to have you here and, yeah, we do have an open seat, so that's fine. Okay, Jenna, do you want to take the lead or Tia?
Yes, I'll just kick
Okay.
us off. Yeah. So, just administrative wise, I've started using this executive summary function for the first time this past meeting. So when you're reading through the agenda and preparing for the meeting, there'll be a little bit more context to these items, so moving into the future.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I do too, thank you.
Yes, of course, yeah. Okay, so just to remind ourselves where we're coming from and where we're heading with this agenda item and the next steps beyond it. It's just to remind ourselves that the Flagstaff Sustainability Office values equity, and we've been engaged in a learning journey over the past few years to understand its significance in sustainability and government, as well as the legacy of equitable design and government programming. So we've learned that if we're not designing with equity in mind or as a priority, there's a good chance that we're unintentionally perpetuating inequities. Staff recently developed an equity assessment tool with the intention of evaluating all of our programs and practices. And the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant Program is one of our very popular programs. So this tool is designed to help us identify areas of strength and opportunities for improving equity in our work. So this discussion was brought forward first in our January commission meeting and more formally introduced last month in March. And during this meeting, we're going to put the assessment to work, very excited, by applying it to the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant Program, which the commission is an integral part of by helping develop materials, assisting with outreach advertising and grant assistance, as well as serving as the grant review panel. And then just wanted to touch on what our definition of equity is for our discussion. And it's meeting communities where they are and appropriately allocating resources and opportunities in accordance with principles of racial and social justice to create equitable outcomes for all community members. This includes recognizing that each person has different circumstances and needs and may require different resources and opportunities to thrive. So all that being said, before we dive into the assessment, I know we have newer and even the longer serving commissioners. I just wanted to provide a refresher on our grant guidelines and our grant scoring rubric, and also touch on our outreach and advertising methods, because I think all of this is important to know about as we dive into the assessment. So it's going to take the next about 10 minutes to go over those. And this is actually the presentation that we use. So instead of having to go through the guideline document page by page, this is the presentation that we used at the last grant workshop in September 2023. So I won't do every single slide, but yeah. So grant overview, this is an annual grant program, and the deadline each year is set at September 30th. Just for context, typically we open it on September 1st, but we can, if you all want me to, or I would be very open to extending that grant opening deadline as well. Awards are up to $7,500. That will likely be the same this year, with a total of $75,000 in the grant funding pool. And then funding award is awarded in the following January, just to give everyone time to review the grants and get all the grant requirements, like documents signed.
Aside,
Mhm.
where does this money, I know you've told us this before, but it doesn't ring in my brain.
Yep.
Where does the $75,000 come from? Is it a federal grant? Is it something that comes from the taxation or?
Is this environmental management fee or general fund?
I believe most of it is the environmental management piece, so that is funded by a small fee on everyone's water.
We give it all away last year?
Yes, oh yeah, and it was very competitive. We, had lots of amazing applications. There was no shortage of,
So 1 in 5, 1 in 10, something like that.
we had 31 applications, and I think awarded 12 or 13.
So 1 in 3.
And and that's because some people, asked for less than 7,500. And then grant eligibility and requirements. It's eligible for individuals, groups, not-for-profits, local businesses are all eligible to apply. Projects must be within the Flagstaff city limits. That's a typical city funding thing. Projects can be an improvement or an expansion of an existing project or a brand new project. And then successful applicants are eligible for one grant award every other fiscal year. So they can't apply for an award the next fiscal year after receiving one. Grants will not be awarded to political or partisan groups, exclusive clubs or associations, applicants who have failed to successfully carry out a previous grant project unless appropriate justification has been made. And then applicants that discriminate based on race, color, religion, gender, age, citizenship, disqualifying disability, national origin, or sexual orientation. And then we also have requirements stating that grant funding cannot be used for the following. No more than 50% of funds can pay for compensation, salaries, commissions, fees, prizes, premiums, or similar expenses to purchase lands or building, or purchases made prior to January 1st. And then we have a statement that says exceptions to the policy may be made solely at the discretion of the Sustainability Commission. Now diving into the grants overarching kind of community goals. Each of the grants should meet at least 2 of these goals, if I'm remembering correctly. Volunteer engagement or management, building community partnerships, and or involving in a meaningful way historically underserved communities, diverse groups, or vulnerable populations. And then we have each applicant pick one of 7 categories of sustainability that their project falls under. And then each of these categories has category objectives that the applicant will also try to fit their project within and explain to us how it is. So, and lots of projects usually fit multiple, but they have to pick one. So here are the food category objectives. So each of the objectives in each category typically has like an educational outreach component. And then this one also talks about increasing food recovery efforts and then also increasing pollinator habitat. And I know this is one that have been discussing about whether to kind of reform this one. And if we want the pollinator habitat to stay with the food objective. Category, I should say. I'm not going to read all these. It's just food project ideas. Stay here for a couple seconds. All right, and then this is the waste category objectives. So educational outreach objective, promoting circular economy, increasing access to knowledge of sharing economy and reuse opportunities. Some waste project ideas and a prior example of an NSG in the waste category. All right, climate action objectives. Education and engagement on impacts of climate change or emissions reductions. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions and encouraging community members to take local climate action. Some time action project ideas and a past project example. Okay. Resilience category objectives. Again, educational outreach, providing opportunities for community members to connect with each other and or share knowledge or skill sets. And strengthening community systems, improving community preparation and response to extreme events.
So how resilient have the projects been that were awarded last year? Have any of them continued beyond the grant that we know of, or?
It is a question, absolutely. And it is a question that we ask about project longevity.
Some of the grants seem to have been partnership things. For example, one that we saw last year was a partnership with U of A extension program. And so obviously that's an ongoing program and supplemented that supported issue.
Still getting something already happening.
Yeah, so you can see those kinds of things. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, some of them are like installations. So the Frisbee Golf Club, they probably have an official name, installed bike racks at the location north of the hospital for their disc golf course. And so like those are permanent. So a lot of them have big lasting impact.
So it's not just a feel good project
Yeah.
that gets going and then kind of falls apart.
I think this year one of them was bike racks from all the shelters too.
Oh, yeah. Mhm. True. Yeah.
All right, so here's some resilience project ideas, an example of a past resilient project that was funded. Okay, building energy objectives, education outreach regarding conservation of energy and or water, increasing use of renewable energy and or reducing building energy and or water use. Building energy project ideas. Great project examples.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that was the video that was submitted.
Oh, I love that. That's really cute. After they've gotten the award, they come back and they do a report to the commission so we can see how successful it's going. Follow us.
Awesome, yep. Public health objectives, education and engagement of community members on public health and environmental issues and that intersection, increasing accessibility to public health resources, and improving social and environmental conditions that will likely result in improved public health or improved preparation or adaptation. Okay. Public health project ideas and a past example of a funded project. Okay, and then I'm just going to run through the rest of these. So transportation objectives listed here, and then project ideas. Okay. The application is provided via SurveyMonkey, but is also accessible in a Word doc. We did receive one Word doc last year.
Oh, can you go back to that one?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to note also, once we receive applications and we all do our first round of reviews, we have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions, and then applicants can answer them and we can kind of rescore if needed. So if something's like if we have a question that allows them to potentially increase their score, we can do that.
So we help with the process of the application.
Yeah, right, like this might be the first grant that a lot of people have written. So it's a good
Asking them
opportunity.
what the underserved community is that they're working with. They may not have been very good about focusing on that. They can share that with them. That's one of our goals.
Okay, and this dives into the grant application scoring, essentially the rubric or how commissioners score it. So asking about application clarity and completion, feasibility of the budget and the timeline, conformity with the overarching community goals, conformity with those category, like the sustainability category specific objectives, rationale behind the project and how it benefits the community, project innovation, is it a new concept or technology, project longevity, what's the lasting impact, and then this was a new question, how does it align or support the carbon neutrality plan?
Do we want to look at this relative to this concern we have regarding the equity issues? Want to look at the grant application scoring piece?
Yep.
See what we're doing today?
All of the materials are like up for review, or all of our processes and outreach and advertising. Yeah, good question. Okay, and then this is just touching on like what's the post-award process, and yeah, they have to send in a W-9. I review the budget and timeline with them, and then work through the funding disbursement process. And then they also get their final presentation and submit a final report survey. Okay. So we went over all of that. One other item I just want to touch on is a brief overview of the outreach and advertising. So yeah, very briefly, we do social media posts, some graphics. We did one great video with a couple commissioners last year. And then sometimes we will like ask other organizations to share the social media posts. And then emails, we have a monthly e-newsletter list that's just over 1,500 people. The commissioners send it out to their networks. Staff sends it to their networks. I send it to all kind of eligible past recipients, and then also ask them to share it with their networks. And then even if they did win last year, I asked them to still share it with their networks so that we could get it out. And then I know that some of the NAU like kind of Green Fund newsletters has been picking up our stuff up. I wasn't on their list at the time, but I'm presuming they may have shared it out. Word of mouth is very much just like if it comes up in the community. Tabling this last year. I don't actually remember if the farmers market was on there, but at the Wednesday community market, we had like a recycling and waste outreach table. And so we did some specific outreach regarding the waste projects that were possible. I did a presentation to city council, did a press release announcing the opening of the grant, and then the AZ Daily Sun picked it up. Not sure if any other media outlets picked it up. And then we did want to announce the awardees after the fact, and that did also get picked up by AZ Daily Sun.
Is there any reason can't be in this month radio? Do they charge money or something?
So CAF Radio, we have ads, and we pay for ads through them just because it's a different audience than we usually reach. Whereas KNAU, they might have picked it up like organically, through, like an events calendar or like an email to them. But
It's the ones you pay for that.
but yes, that's one. Yeah. And then the radio spot, like I did go on like for free to just talk about it with the morning host. And then the Sunnyside radio spot, it's actually a previous winner of the neighborhood sustainability grant that does kind of an environmental learn, know, grow day. And then flyers, kind of the grant workshop and info sessions, office hours. And then throughout the year, just kind of answering questions via email, adding them to the list to contact when it opens the next year, and then tabling events. We just had some flyers at a farmers resource fair in March and brought a food project flyer. All right, so those are just, wanted to give you a run through for those of you that have not probably read through all the guidelines. Because you are new and we haven't been through the process yet, and then to provide a refresher on for the other commissioners. So it up to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Jenna Ortega, I work in the climate team of the City Flagstaff Sustainability Office. And I got to join most of you last month to kind of really dive into this. And so to start, Tia has asked me to give kind of a quick review. And always at the beginning of equity work, I love to talk about trying to establish a safe space for us. This is difficult work. These are difficult conversations. And so I like to try to share some guidelines for making sure that we are taking care of ourselves tonight. And so a few of them, which we talked about last time, are just being fully present and responsible for how you are showing up in these conversations by only speaking for ourselves, so making sure we are not speaking for other people and using I statements, listening deeply to each other and just seeking to understand different people's experiences, making sure we're leaving space for everyone in this conversation. So some of us who speak a lot can practice kind of taking a step back, and others who don't speak a lot can practice taking a step up and adding to this conversation. Knowing that we might have to lean into discomfort at times during these conversations and being prepared for the chance of non-closure on a topic or something that we're working on. I think the most important thing is that you can kind of switch from like a productive conversation into one that doesn't feel okay for even just one person at the table. And so making sure we are checking in on each other and really how we handled that moment really is how safe the space is or not. So just wanted to start with that. The tool we're going to use tonight is to really collect data and information and to help us hopefully identify if there are inequities in this program in particular, but for our office, it's a tool to really think about our policies, our programs, our practices, how we're doing our work. And then there's parts of this that are kind of future thinking to identify actions to make improvements as well. And it's to practice being accountable to the community as well as to the city, everyone we're serving, and all of that. It can also be an opportunity to identify challenges that perhaps we need more resources on, or training or funding. So please think about that as well. And then back to kind of that this is just the beginning. Collecting data is part of a long process of trying to build more equity into what we're doing. So this is kind of a first step to really just see where we're at and see where we can make some improvements. And so before I get into kind of what Tia and I put together of hopefully a process that's going to work tonight for this group, is that this tool is not perfect. And I spent a year with other staff working on it, and it's still very far from being perfect. So especially for different things, right? This is a grant program versus maybe like a one-time event like Earth Day. So when we get in there, we can definitely make changes, add things, or if this question doesn't make sense for the type of work that you all are doing through the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant Program. It's a working document. We know it's going to change all the time. So I wanted to keep that in mind. I am not an expert on equity, and I assume a lot of us at the table have different experiences, and that's okay. It's so great to be able to do this with a group of people so that we can all contribute to it. So don't feel like you need to be an expert to be able to do this work. Okay, so our process tonight.
we're gonna go through each section question one by one. There are 5 sections. So we're thinking about 12 to 15 minutes per section. I imagine the first one might take us like a little bit longer to get into our flow. And then the last section is accountability, and it will kind of just be pulling pieces from the other section. So even if we go a little over, I think we will have a good amount of time to really go through everything. So we'll start each section one at a time by just introducing the section, reading the questions, reading a couple examples, and then take a quick pause to see if anyone has questions on just what that question is asking. And then we will ask you to take about 5 minutes with your piece of paper and writing utensil to jot down some ideas that come to your mind when asked that question. And Tia and I and Jenny and maybe Dre, if he's willing, can even like come around if you have an idea you want to talk about, and we'll be ready to come over. And then we'll take about 5 minutes to share out your responses. And I think we will try to get to them all, but knowing that we might not is okay. We will have them written down, and we were thinking that it might be good. You know, a lot of these questions you can put multiple answers. So if someone starts sharing, they can share one of their answers, and then we'll jump to the next person just so we don't spend all the time on someone reading their probably like 10 fantastic answers. And then Marissa's going to help us kind of document this as we go, but we'll also make sure to collect anything afterwards. And I believe on the agenda tonight is to create a working group that can also take anything we didn't get to and pull it all together as well. Did I miss anything with that, Tia?
That's good.
Okay. Any questions on that process? Yeah.
So what is already filled in these tables? Is this the like pre-assessment that you've already done?
That's examples from
Oh, okay.
a totally different
Not
program. that
related to
we
us.
launched.
Oh, it's not us.
No, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know.
Just make
It sounded legit.
So why are we talking about it? It's already written down.
Maybe, I guess I didn't even really look at the examples to see if they made sense for this program.
That's true, yeah. And I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff that we need is gonna have to involve like research into we're surveying, who's applying.
And I
That's all
have
stuff
some
that
of
you
that, yeah.
So I feel like this is gonna take way more than 10 to 12 minutes per section.
And so I think if we
An hour
kind
per
of
section.
identify those things too, and it's like research to be done, I think that is totally okay, especially with the formation of a working group of just kind of like, is it demographics? Is it this? And then what do we need to find out the answers to that? And sometimes the answer might be like, we don't have the data to answer this. And that's the answer on a lot of my programs that I've run this through. And so there is kind of a follow-up you'll see in the table, like, what can you do? And then you can kind of know, like, maybe we should start asking these questions, or what's a strategy you can use moving forward to make sure that you have the data to even answer these questions.
What was the perspective of inequity in the previous grant round? I mean, 30 grants given or 30 applicants, 12 grants. Were there any of those, you know, if you looked at them through that lens now, or did we not get it right?
No, this is the lens. We haven't looked through the lens yet. And the sustainability office is just running all of our programs through. And the reason we're bringing it here is because the commission is so integral to the grant program. So
Probably had more anecdotal responses than data.
Yeah, for sure.
Data, because we all read all of the applications and we could probably spew out what we thought, what we perceived when we saw it, but it wasn't with the perspective of.
Especially in the past of that lens and say, well, how did we do and where can we go from there?
So yeah, just before we dive in on that point, I did the last 2 years looking at what demographic data we do have, which is very limited because all the question that we do ask, or I guess what we know is the project physical address. And then I didn't necessarily dive into kind of like each specific answer regarding like what communities they're engaging. We could do that. That is absolutely like an option we could do.
But right now, a couple of the things we have is like neighborhood. So this is just the last 2 years of grants. This is, and not even like complete neighborhoods, or like, how others define neighborhoods, but this is, so we had like 1 grant in Country Club, 0 in Coconino Estates, Cheshire, 4 in downtown Townside area, 2 in Eastern Flagstaff. 8 were either like undefined at the time of application or like we're going to serve like all of general Flagstaff. 0 in La Plaza Vieja, 4 in Sunnyside Greenlaw, 3 Macmillan Mesa Hospital Hill area, 1 in like industrial north or like east Flagstaff, and then 0 West Route 66 and 0 NAU. But again, this is just the last 2 years. And we just, yeah, caveat, we don't have a lot of demographic data that isn't, that wouldn't require a lot of digging into, I guess, to like pull out answers.
So
That makes sense.
does it make more sense, and this is I apologize for the knee-jerk response, but does it make more sense to review the kinds of things that are recommended to make sure that we are providing for equity and working to ensure that there's a tremendous amount of involvement, and do some goal setting going forward rather than looking back, oh, we didn't do that, we didn't do it there, and we missed that person, rather than doing a check, if you will, because we were innocently looking at all of the applicants and said, oh yeah, this looks pretty good, and that looks pretty good, but not necessarily with any particular structure. That rather as a community, as a group, we look at and say, well, maybe what we should be doing for the future is ensuring that every community gets lots of communication, that we can volunteer to go in and pass out flyers to people that might need it, or I'm right down Murdoch Center. I thought, well, what is a place where we do any real focusing and look at focusing for the future as opposed to doing too much digging into what we might not have done right in the past.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way to move forward, and you'll see these questions are kind of set up like that anyways, and especially if your answer is like, I don't have the data at the moment, like that is really, each question does like, what can you do? So I think that's a great spot to focus, is not worrying about the past that you can't change right now and thinking about how you can improve it moving forward. So I think that's totally.
It felt like when we were doing the evaluations, I'm sure, I know I appreciate this. Let me say this from my own perspective, and I apologize for using the I perspective here. But I did that. I'm sure everybody else did. We looked at, oh, there's a Native American group that wants to do something with this. And then that rang a bell for me. I wanted to give support because they talked about encouraging their culture, teaching their children how to grow food. Those things influenced me. And I think it probably influenced all of us. And it's something that perhaps in the future we could say, when we see those kinds of things, that would be something that might give an extra point to, or something to that effect. Just thought.
Yeah, you can absolutely have a whole equity section in your scoring rubric and come up with some
That's
questions.
exactly
based
what
on
I'm
that.
suggesting.
Yes, I know.
Any other initial questions? How's everyone feeling?
Jenna, I'm gonna have to leave a little bit early because I have another meeting to attend. And so just thought I'd let you know I'm gonna have to sneak out.
Thank you.
Okay.
That makes me feel better. I'd be worried that we did something wrong and chasing you down the hall. So we will get started and try it. And there's already been some great ideas on kind of this process. So we'll just see how it goes. And so the first question is outreach and communication. And so it's kind of asking broadly who's your intended audience, but it's both your current intended audience and responses for expanding your audience to improve equity in the program. So one thing I want to say here is just to make sure that we maintain our focus on equity. So here we want to limit answers to people or communities who may be impacted by racism, discrimination, may face barriers due to systemic inequities within our community. So we're not doing this as kind of a broad, the answer should not be like every organization or person in Flagstaff, because we really want to
hone in on kind of the equity lens here. So for each intended audience you list on the first left column, then you go ahead and answer the following questions in the next columns, which are you currently reaching this audience, with your outreach? Do you have any data to support this? And again, it's okay if the answer is no, or I don't know. That's just a quick answer. And then what relevant methods are you using to reach this specific audience? So you can think about, relevant methods for that audience, culturally appropriate methods, think about accessibility, inclusion, and kind of even who is helping you create these type of methods. Who did you ask to get this information? And then that fourth column would be your ideas to reach this audience more effectively in the future. Any questions on that section?
My only question is, what do you want us to do with it? I mean, do you want us to discuss it and answer these questions? Do you want us to take this home?
So we're gonna take a couple minutes, all time to each jot down your own answers, and then we'll bring it back to a roundtable discussion and see how many we can get on the board right now, and then if not, we will have the working group follow up.
There you go. Jenna and I are available to answer questions. Again, it's okay, right? I don't know, or
Well, and I guess my question too is, you have, who's the intended audience on the left, for example, people with low income. What about an intended audience, students, school children? If there isn't a column, there isn't a column anywhere, you don't know whether.
Well, these are fake examples.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So we're really not addressing these examples, we're doing our own, is that correct?
Yes. But as far as students, I would encourage you to not go that broad, just kind of.
Well, I'm thinking about children in
Okay.
communities that have indications that they have socioeconomic needs.
Perfect.
I'm hitting a little speed bump here. So are we reaching our intended audience? So the intended audience is anybody who's eligible to apply for the sustainability grant, right? And so that's a long list of nonprofits, community organizations, businesses, et cetera. It's a lot, it's a very broad audience. And so I'm struggling I'm struggling to fill that box in. And, looking at these examples, the purpose of doing this exercise is to make sure that we are looking at things through a lens of equity and diversity. Well, one of the overarching goals of the program is, is the project meaningfully involving underserved communities, diverse groups, or vulnerable populations? So that's part of the scoring rubric, but that's not like our intended audience. And so I guess I'm just having a hard time breaking down like a segment of the population that I put in this box. Nonprofits, maybe? Is that what you're looking for?
No, not specifically. And I think like you're kind of hitting on that this is like a very broad and vague tool. And I think it goes back to kind of like looking forward. Are there specific audiences that maybe in the past you haven't seen get involved, or that you want to really think about trying to make sure that they are included in outreach and communication. So I think it could be really forward-looking as well, since too, it's such a broad category of kind of setting these goals. Like, do we want to try to make sure we are setting goals for our outreach as well as maybe like scoring rubric stuff?
Because I mean, there's a systemic inequity in the application process. That's kind of one thing, but you know, if we're just trying to figure out how to get to all the different groups and communicate with them, I mean, that's really a whole different question. That's marketing and advertising.
We'd have to be developing our own biases too. And I wrote down young people to affect the future, for example. That would be a group I would want to affect. That's just me. I mean, it's like, but that's just us. I mean, it isn't necessarily something inherent in this particular grant. So we're looking at potentially adjusting the grant. No?
Yes. Oh, definitely looking at adjusting the grant. And I know Amy and I had talked about that previously, and it just hit me like, I guess, like we have like our eligibility requirements. And then we do ask like more specifically about like who in the community we are kind of trying to reach. And it, so like we've got, I guess, like the community goals or the volunteers. Second one, the partnerships. Let me go back up. And then the third, like effectively,
The third one is the one that's different.
yeah, we're trying to get at, although it is so like broad, involving in a meaningful way.
Historically, yeah.
So this isn't, I guess, it's not necessarily the applicant themselves, but it's who the grant project itself is trying to serve.
And that's the conundrum. Is that it's in the goal structure, but we don't necessarily input it into the frame of how to achieve the goal.
So I don't mean to drag this on, but like the outreach, what this is asking, we are evaluating the outreach and communication for the neighborhood sustainability grant program, right? So we should be doing outreach and communication to those that are eligible to apply. But so like what you said, the young people that are terrified of climate change and that really are motivated to do work in the community to make a difference. That is an amazing target audience that we should definitely make sure we're hitting.
Or they need to be learning how to grow food because they're eating that. They're, going to the chips instead of learning how to grow vegetables. And if they grow the that was one of the grants that was already done. They should have said,
right, but I don't think that the outreach and communication that we do to get people to apply is to the audience that we want to benefit from those grant programs.
So that,
you know what I'm saying? Like there's a difference between the population that we want these grant programs to serve and the population that is eligible to apply. Does that make sense?
It does, but I, kind of in the, like, you are, like, we want everybody to see our
Absolutely.
outreach, right? But I think part of the assessment is, well, who is actually seeing the outreach?
Yeah.
Who do we want to see the outreach that would benefit from the grant the most that's currently not seeing it? So like, yes, in theory, it would be great if every single Flagstaff resident saw this opportunity, but the reality is not everybody's seeing the opportunity. We want to determine, are there groups of people that we could be reaching that we're not reaching that are more likely to benefit from something like favorites?
well, there's organizations like FUSD. If you just go to FUSD, you tell them this is what we're looking for. Hoping that you start. We'll get you, go through you to interact with your school system, environmental teachers, classes, blah, blah, blah. Same thing with, there's churches in town that are predominantly serve people of color. I mean, there's a Spanish Catholic church. Makes sense to go to the priest there and say, we're looking for people that might be interested in doing something that next to the environment. We've got some grants. There may be young farmers that have been at the church. I don't know if it's appropriate for a government agency to interact with religions in that sense, but they're there you go. You have all this already.
But like, are we reaching anyone that speaks Spanish?
Well, that's the thing is we're sending out a pamphlet that is in Spanish. But that doesn't necessarily, and I used to.
Are all of the materials translated to Spanish? Because I didn't think.
Oh, I thought they were. I thought that's what it said. Oh, I'm reading this. Other
It's a different grant program. It is a different program that's on there, which is probably why the materials are very confusing.
The real goal is that every single person in Flagstaff could possibly apply to this grant, which is great. and we're excluding all of our Spanish speaking population because we don't have our materials translated, like that's what.
So that's a good thing.
It's also
to put on
possible
this
to
list.
translate into Navajo,
Totally.
maybe some Asian language.
And like, can we like take some of the funding that we have, the $75,000 and pay a translator? Right, like that's one of the solutions to the equity assessment, because I know we're probably not gonna get more money.
Well, there are a great many places where they have
We could in the
translators.
future, see
School
more money
districts
for
have
it.
translators. You could take it to them and ask them what they do that.
Yeah, I don't think that.
And I have a small equity fund that's what I use it
Yeah.
for, so I think
Yeah.
we would ask,
The equity.
you know,
Right.
staff too, if we have any extra in our
Yeah.
budget for equity reasons, and we try to keep some for that.
And if I could just add, this is a beautiful example of why doing the assessment is really, it can lead to.
I was waiting for Jenny to jump in and just sit back and let the conversation go, but that is what I also think is beautiful.
Well, I thought something Amy said I'm still a little stuck on, but is the idea that we're got, people that are gonna benefit and people that are probably gonna be doing the beneficiary, being the facilitator of the benefit. And they're two very different audiences, I'm thinking, as far as it goes, and I don't know, does it make sense to try and get to the very end person who we hope benefits from all of these things or from what these are, or do we just kind of focus on the groups and entities that have that capacity
You
to
mean work
deliver?
grassroots basis, get the people, like, for example, the people that need help with the bags that are.
They're the hardest ones to reach at any level, for anything.
And we have lower bandwidth.
But you start to spend a lot, if you're trying to,
Big gap.
translate into every potential language and things like that, all of a sudden the funding is being spent on operations and not on.
Well, but we have somebody with operations over here. Yeah.
Not enough money for every language, but I think you can
Languages or maybe
find data and say, okay, we're going to at least reach, the top 3 languages spoken in our community
Yeah.
type of thing. So it doesn't have to go down to reaching every single person, because we are never going to get there, unfortunately. But I think kind of setting these goals of, trying to make slight improvements in each area is worth it.
I just, really like this, people, how can we get, the people that we're trying to, have our program impact also be the people applying, what are the barriers? And
So divide that up. Are you thinking, for example, rather than teachers, the kids that are gonna be in the program, or rather than the guys that are putting the bicyclers in the program, when you're thinking about that division between the two, what are you thinking?
Before I answer that, I was just thinking, funding the grassroots organizers, rather than maybe an entity deciding what's best for that community. And I'm not saying that we do that frequently. I'm just
Well, in general, the grants came from organizers. I mean, the people that do the farmer's market, it wasn't necessarily the farmers that said, we want to have a market. Can you arrange for that? It was the people that organized it.
Yeah, so maybe not
Well, and
I
it's,
think a mix of both is good, right?
We
You
have
don't
had
want to
both.
say we're only gonna fund grassroots projects, because
Yeah.
then the farmer's market, then the arboretum, all the places that are serving so many people in our community won't
Right.
get any money, so.
Right.
It's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I don't think you were.
well, and I
Yeah.
didn't mean, I probably threw the monkey wrench in when I mentioned a school district, because that makes it sound like it's this organization. But they have a lot of people at the district level that can funnel and get information out to people. and
Totally.
Then it can come back to us. It doesn't necessarily, mean the district itself gets money, right?
Sure.
I think where we need to focus this conversation is on going back to the fact that it's pretty much anyone in Flagstaff that's eligible to apply to this program, like the nonprofits and businesses, et cetera. And we're doing a good job. That was a long list of outreach that you did, hitting events, social media, markets, going on the radio, picking calf country, whatever. That's a lot of outreach. So we're probably hitting a pretty broad target audience of who we want to hit already. But the non-English speakers is a really good example. If we don't have
any materials that are in any other languages, then we could be missing some of those nonprofits that, benefit indigenous communities or La Paz Vieja. And another one might be like the unsheltered population. From being at some of the city council meetings, I've seen that some unsheltered folks, they have resources, they have some things, but unfortunately not home. So they might be able to organize and mobilize an effort to apply for one of these grants if they knew about them, but I don't know how to target.
They have a pretty
That
well-developed
audience,
network.
that
actually.
audience.
One place has flyers in grocery stores, because they go into the grocery stores
Sure.
and buy things.
But yeah, I don't think we need to like get super into the weeds on this one, because I think there are others that are. And I feel like I did this by bringing up the speed
Well,
bump.
And I think you're hitting on something too. Back to like, we don't have data. We don't actually know who we've reached. So it's hard to, I think if you had a list and it showed
that would be
demographic breakdown
fantastic.
of everyone
Yeah.
who you reached, different answers might be coming. So I think some goals could come out of this first section of like, do we want to collect additional data on who we are reaching with this? Do we want to set, a couple small goals of like language access and things like that? But, we are this kind of like non-disclosure and messiness, like we're not gonna just solve all of these problems, but I think setting a couple of goals, which would be the last section, section 5, we can revisit and be like, do we want to set a couple goals when it comes to outreach? And I think it's really trying to make sure that you are thinking about these people that you might want to reach or serve, and just what methods are you using and are they relevant? And we might not know, but until we collect that data to be like, oh, no young people saw this, no, this group saw this, so.
Well, I think I think it speaks volumes, it's not in Spanish. I think that, right there.
Yeah, I think that's something positive we've identified.
Is there a Spanish translator at the city level? Like, what if there was a Spanish speaking person that wanted help with the grant? And yes, there probably.
Oh, wait, I mean,
There's not
There's probably a
one that,
Spanish-speaking person.
there's,
in the city,
I'm
but
sure
not
there's.
paid as a translator.
There's one at the school district, I'm sure, it's a federal law. So we should have one that is at the city.
I agree. But a member of our equity advisory group who has been wonderful is always really, it's not Dre, but because equity advisory group, really looks forward to learning about the programs and translating. She's done multiple programs for us and then is available to translate any applications back that come in.
Yeah,
in
that was my other
language.
question.
Yes.
I couldn't Spanish. The Google Translate's got really good,
Yeah.
it's just not perfect, right? So,
Yeah.
you would want to miss something.
Absolutely.
I have a question. How are you catering to a community that does not have consistent access to technology? Are you offering them paper applications in the form of like saying you can apply via paper, or is it required SurveyMonkey or submitting a Word doc?
That's a really good question.
So they do have access to a Word doc, although I don't know if like our non-technology outreach methods, like I don't think in like the radio ads, like we might not be specific about like Word applications available for pickup at our sustainability office at, address.
Well, that would be another way
So-
to hit the community, is having applications at the libraries. At the various spots, and then big sign saying, are you interested in applying for this grant? And there's that, $7,500, big picture, and maybe some pictures of things that went on.
Coaching for that, I mean,
You volunteer coach.
because I mean, personally, as soon as I see one of those kinds of applications, I put it away and go do something else.
Yep.
And I have an education and I can get through it if I have to, but if I don't, I've got no interest
Well,
in
the
it.
application isn't all that, I don't think it's that hard. It doesn't, as I recall. It's things like, what do you want to do? How do you want to get there? That kind of thing is pretty basic stuff.
It's hard for me to assess like what a community member might think of it.
Because you write grants.
I just
Think of an
live and
8th grade
breathe it kind of.
reading kind of thing and.
We do multiple grant workshops that the commission leads. and they're like drop-in workshops, and we also last semester, round, we did office hours, so different commissioners held drop-in office hours that if you had questions, if you had a project that you wanted to talk through, if you didn't understand something with the application, you could just do a one-on-one meeting with the commissioner.
Bring your application in, get some help filling it in.
Yeah.
and Completing it and things like that.
And I think that was really helpful. I did the office hours piece in my office, like I had like 4 people come and it took the whole time.
So people were using that.
Yeah. So I think if you also saw the applicant outreach, right, like the advertisements for it, and you were like, oh, I wonder if I could do this paper and pencil. Like there's lots of opportunities to ask questions. So I think that's good too. Not that you necessarily know what questions to ask all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Just think somebody cold off the street without any experience in this, but has an idea and wants to be in the neighborhood.
Well, we're talking about communication. I just want to clarify. Is it available? Is it communicated that there are resources for people that help them apply? Is that communicated, or is that just something that we kind of give them once they apply? Is that on the actual first thing they see, second thing they see?
I know that it's, that list of outreach that Tia had up. Some of those types of outreach, we advertise the same, like when we do the workshops and when we do the office hours, it's also advertised through those means. I don't know if it's specifically in the grant,
The guidelines.
in the guidelines, because that's,
I think that would be a good place.
that's like a,
But it's like kind of buried in there. And then the other place it would live is like on the website, which
Yeah, it's on the city
admittedly could use some updates as well.
and then, the social media. I mean, if we get all of our ducks in a row before we start advertising and we like pick our workshop days and our office hours, we could definitely have it all on there.
I guess this just, it goes back into the thing of anyone who is eligible can apply, but the resource, the people and organizations that have in my opinion, the people and organizations who apply, they have the resources to get it done. They have the resources to apply. So we're probably missing out on a demographic of people who are intimidated by it. And by making that front word, you reach an audience that you're not reaching.
I have on mine, people have never applied to a grant before. Like, who do you want to outreach to? Like, people that have, it's great when people that are really experienced grant writers apply and it shows, and they usually rank pretty high because it's well written. But I think it's also important to score the ones that are maybe less well written with the lens of, these are people that are new to this, and we want to really focus on the project, not on like the writing itself. But I think you're right about like it's intimidating to write a grant proposal. $7,500 is a big ticket. So how do we make it less intimidating for people?
I would also advise a video or spoken option. Not everybody's gonna choose that, probably very few are gonna choose that,
Sustainability Office website.
but within the sense of,
Or an application.
or an application, or for a Zoom, or request a Zoom to explain. Because I can tell you, like, I have resources. I'm one of those people that has resources, has applied to a lot of these, and I have extra time. And I go through the process, and I'm decent at writing, but I'm far better of an explainer and speaker to not only quickly answer questions about the scope and the additional broader ideas, because what you guys do in sustainability, very cerebral ideas, this isn't tangible. There's very hard tangibility that happens with sustainability sometimes. And sometimes people can't write that level, but can they speak it to you?
So are you saying
Can they
that
tell
there
the story?
there
There
would
could
be
be an
a-
option.
an option of
There
doing
at
a
least-
video of this
yes.
is what our grant request.
Either a video or request 3 of you could be on a Zoom call. And
I do think for equity, it would have to be a video because every grant applicant would not get the like immediate
Yeah,
feedback.
again.
Right.
I was about recording with the video
Yeah.
too, but I guess everybody's got his phone or.
I
No,
mean,
I think
and not
that's
everybody, I understand, but like, say you have those open office hours, and a person who doesn't have the means is like, I really want to get this done and I'm gonna show up. Well, maybe somebody here who has the resources can be like, you know what, we're gonna film it for you real quick.
Yeah.
Let's film you speaking about what you really feel in your heart about why you think this is worthy of $7,500. And then, you know, at least you have that base down and it's somebody that just told a story and maybe they didn't, because they might not have access to a computer. They might not have access to a Zoom or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it just gives people an additional option that writing can limit, you're already like cutting out a large swath of
Yeah.
people who don't have time to write, don't want to feel like they can tell their story and answer all those questions. And it just gives people another option.
Well, the questions would need to be answered in the video. That would
Yeah,
need to
right,
say,
yeah.
this is, because the
Yeah.
rubrics for evaluating, it goes from
Yeah.
question to question to question. That's
Yeah.
a really good idea.
So if you have almost like a pitch video too.
Yeah.
No, maybe not quite. Yeah, I've been really steeped in these pitch competitions lately and I just went through an application process where the application involved a short video submission and a paper application. And, you know, there were both components to the application process. So, you know, maybe we could have, I don't know if you have options. It seems like if some people only put in the video and some people only put in the paper application, that might be challenging to evaluate against each other.
Well, as long as the video answers the questions
Yeah.
as long as it says, for example, okay, here's the video. I want to do a neighborhood garden. So how much money are you, what are you gonna spend your money on? You have to say, well, I want to spend $50 on the wood and I'm gonna spend $200 on the dirt. I'm gonna spend $50 on the seed that they would, because that's the questions that are written down. They have to give the same kind of answers because that's how the rubric evaluates based on that. But once people are over that hump,
Or even just audio.
I've taken grant
Yeah.
applications over the phone where I was the
Uh-huh.
one transcribing
Yeah.
word by word what the person over the phone was saying because
Yeah.
they didn't have a printer or ability to drive to our office to get the application or a computer.
So that would be a service that we offer. Is that what you're suggesting? That they would call and we would say, okay, here's the grant application. What do you want to do? What do you want the title to be? And they'll tell you.
It used to be kind of like ways to apply and you list out the different ways to apply. Like here's an online application, here's a paper application. Or I got a free subscription to Calendly where people could book an appointment with me and then that's how they would apply.
My only point being that there would need to be some substantive structure that, because you're evaluating one person's application versus another. And I'm listening to them on the phone, hey, that sounds good. And someone else has written it down, it will bias what your decisions would be. So it would need to be as much of simplicity, of similarity, so that the evaluation would be within the rubric, consistent with each thing. Because otherwise you may end up saying, oh, that person sounds so wonderful. Let's give it to them.
Yeah.
That's not the person.
Well, there can be some hurdles, I'm assuming we have to have some hurdles, you know.
Okay, no, that was a long time on communication and outreach and there is still.
Really important to do
People did some
correctly.
process.
Yeah, we did. And so I guess, I know we are way over time. Is there interest in trying to get through one more section at least? And
Now that we
Tia,
know that these are not our.
does that feel okay on time, Tia, to take like 10 minutes for another section? Okay. Okay, so the next section is, and this might be a kind of a similar thing we get into because it is relationships and stakeholders. So how does this program engage with people and kind of using that same equity context? And how are you engaging with them? Are you doing anything that might empower them? And then who else do you want to bring into these conversations? And so this might feel similar since I think we kind of stepped out of the bounds of outreach and communication and we're talking more about how we are engaging them by providing grant funding.
That's a question. In relation to this, when someone is denied their application, what kind of communication do we do? Do we give them? I'm assuming someone contacts them and says, we really appreciate your application, but unfortunately, there were many people that had lots of good ideas and your particular application didn't meet some criteria. Do you then give them feedback about what they didn't meet the criteria on? Or is it like, thanks, you can always apply next year? Because that's a big part of developing relationships, not just who gets it, but who doesn't. They need to have that feeling that they were respected and that perhaps their ideas were good ideas, maybe they did something different with the ideas, it could be a winner next year. So that's my question.
So what we currently do, or I currently do is send an email. I can't remember if it's by person or just like a general, like.
To everybody
CC
to get it,
everyone,
yeah.
and then offer to provide feedback. Um, And then some people did reach out to get that further feedback. And it was kind of difficult to provide, honestly, because
It's a burden.
I was like sort of looking at what I was doing was like remembering what our conversations were in our discussion at the commission meeting, and then also looking at comments and then trying to create like a cohesive feedback, but then also like summarizing why maybe someone else, like other projects scored higher. So it was difficult, and I don't think I talked to the phone on anyone, with anyone, so.
It might behoove us when we make the determinations to give specific information about why it was not selected and be clear so that you have something you can work with. I mean, it might just be as simple as the request was outside the range of the goal or whatever it is, but something that comes from the commission, so it's not on your shoulders and it's clear to the person receiving the information what was not good, whatever.
I agree. I think that would be incredibly impactful and empowering, especially for people who it was their first grant application or had no idea how to improve if they wanted to apply in the future.
We're making this big effort to reach out. If somebody does reach back, we need to be able to be positive about what went the other way, what went south.
And I love that you brought this up because earlier I made a note of that whole first category says outreach and communication. And I was like, we don't ask about other communication that you do in the project. So I already noted that something else to add to this.
Since it's a communication, it shouldn't be something that you have to say, well, let me see, I think they said, that's not fair to you. It should, or you shouldn't have to be too eager, well, I'm sorry, you just weren't good enough, or you asked too much money, or, we have 5 other applicants with the same process. We need to take care of other people, something that is more specific.
How did it actually go last year? I mean, we just all 31 applications were on the table and everyone's kind of read through it and scored it and then brought it together.
You spent long hours.
Yeah. Tia has a really nice process of like delegating to all the commissioners and submitting scores. Do you want to answer a question?
Yeah, and actually the commission this last year, I don't know if it was the first time, didn't read through all of them. It was a randomized selection. That each application was reviewed by at least 3 commissioners. So that each commissioner wasn't having to read all 31 applications. It was, I think, like 12 to 13-ish or so, with some hiccups with like having to chase down some folks. to,
I was a
like,
hiccup.
grade more.
I
but-
read more than I was supposed to read. I thought I was supposed to read these. No, Mary, you're supposed to read those.
That's okay. There's quite a few hiccups, but obviously we got everything scored by the number of commissioners needed to score it. So,
That would have been
And
the
then-
basis for the feedback as well for the unsuccessful ones.
But
So
then
we're
we
supposed
met as
to
a
comment,
group
but
and
if
talked
you
about it.
downgrade them, you leave a comment why in your own personal notes. So
That's true,
then when we
yeah.
come and talk about them all, hey, what do you think about the shelters proposal? Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, and then we usually spend most of our time kind of talking about the ones that fall right around the middle cutoff line. So like the ones that are all pretty consistently scored high by the 3 commissioners, or like everybody agreed. The ones were consistently scored low, everybody agreed. And the ones that kind of had that right around the cutoff, we spent a lot of time talking about, you can adjust your scores if you miss something or if, so it kind of like helps.
Well, until you talk to them too, there were some places I assume that you might say to them, you're asking for 7,500 and yet, there's probably that we might be able to 3,500. And there was there not?
there were like the last 3 on the line, that, I think the commission decided to give 6,000, which was close to at least one of those applications, and then a little bit less. And so I did, like, upon notifying them of the award and then in the grant meeting, I was talking to them to kind of talk through like if that would work with them and, what their plan was to make up for that kind of gap.
It was really nice, though, to have the workload divided between all of us because I spent a lot of time on just the 13 or 14 applications I looked at. It, yeah, felt like a lot. So I can't imagine doing twice plus.
Are they too complicated, the applications?
They're pretty simple applications, but I don't know.
About an hour each.
But you're putting a rubric and determining whether they should have 3 points or 5 points.
And I was,
The question is, why did you give them 3?
yeah, I was trying to be really mindful of scoring them all the same and like, you know, everyone worked really hard on these applications and I just wanted to, you know, give the attention that they deserved. And they're pretty simple applications. I mean, not terribly long. I've seen much worse.
I think we actually saw review maps for like a big section.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remain objective multiple times. I'm saying.
I've got
Well-
I guess more of a commission question. Is there plans to revisit this at another date?
This.
Yeah. Yeah. Would it be beneficial or allowed for us to take this home, fill it out, and then revisit it and have a full-on discussion where everything's incorporated next time or following time? Or do you feel that, you know,
For me, I won't speak for Tia, this is ongoing work. I am happy to come here and anytime you want to talk about this, I will be here. And yeah, a lot of thought like should go into it. And so I love the idea. And then I know there was potentially a working group, so I think that could be up to you all if this is done by the whole group, which can be very, you know, a really good process for everyone to hear and talk through these things. Or if there's not capacity for that, that's understandable too.
And to your point, I think, like I've been on the commission for 4 years. I've done 4 rounds of these grants. I've been on multiple working groups to improve the grant application itself. So I'm really invested and I really want to do it, but I think a really important point is a fresh perspective of I've never looked at the grant before. What do I think from like just seeing it for the first time using this? Because like I come with these inherent biases of I've been doing this for years. So I know it's probably a little overwhelming to like start the commission and have this like big task, but I think it's a really important opportunity for getting a fresh perspective and not like, you know, seeing it from my point of view, which has been doing it for past 4 years. And you two just did it one time, which I think is kind of like the perfect combination of experience. Right, so I know it's probably seems like a lot, but I think it'll offer really valuable insight.
And I think there might be like data too, without putting too much burden on past applicants, but you know, a short survey and maybe there was kind of a feedback survey or something like that to get some basic data too on like, how difficult was this 1 to 10? Like, how do you feel like the process went? What do you think?
Like, we have like a one final question on like the final report survey, that typically doesn't get answered. And so this is like a year after they received it, and is only going to those who like were awarded it. And it's just like, do you have any feedback on the neighborhood sustainability grant? So.
There might have been somebody who said something that.
I think
We
it's
should
fair.
do that. That's great. Totally, yeah.
Quick survey, just all past applicants, like we're working on making improvements to the program. Do you have 5 minutes to provide some input on, you know, this
So they-
3-question survey?
Reach outs too, right? So in the list of folks that we reach out to as past winners and applicants.
We have other.
There's one question I had to ask in that goals section. There's 1, 2, 3 goals, 1 and 2, 3. The third one is basically the makeup of the people that we awarded, you know, the community, blah, blah, blah. But as I recall, we asked that they meet at least 2 of the 3. Perhaps what we should be saying is they need to have the third one and then 1 or 2 of the other. Something like that. If that's something, if it is something that we want to prioritize, if we want to prioritize on certain communities, then we might want to say that one has to be in it and then one of the other 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could set, you know, there's like the justice board thing where maybe like 40% of our applicants need to meet these certain criteria or ideas like that.
Is there a list of underserved communities or is there any sort of definition of what, you know, they are or who they are?
We had that meeting last week, wasn't that what last time? Wasn't that what the list was?
No, but there are, so I like the end of this, and I'm not sure if Tia printed it out. It is not all-encompassing list, but we got the same question throughout our office. So as I said, this is a working document we've been adding, so there are examples back there, but it is not necessarily have a breakdown of the community of Flagstaff and how that equals out or anything, but it's just to have ideas on maybe targets,
There are-
intended audience.
There are some tools that identify communities that are low income and disadvantaged. And the ones that I know of are specifically with respect to climate and environmental justice. But it's called the CJUST tool, and you can look at individual neighborhoods, and they take into account different public health risk factors and location, proximity to highways and, factories or,
That's a
so.
global assessment, so I have a bit of
Well,
overlap here.
that's an EPA. It's the one I'm talking about
You can
specifically, is
break
the
it
EPA.
down.
I've looked at Flagstaff on it. You can hover and see data. It's really interesting. But that is specifically with respect to climate and environmental justice.
Close to the free,
Um,
toxic waste.
yeah,
things.
And there is income information in that tool embedded in it. But I'm sure there's one that is not focused on climate and environmental justice. There are tools.
Yeah, that's the one that I know of, but I think too, like, in community even, like asking around and just trying to kind of make your own list. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think even going with kind of when it comes to climate justice, who are the people most impacted by it is a great list to start with.
Broken down by census block groups, so you can, get neighborhoods.
The 80%. Or you're hitting, the majority of folks that you want to hit. Is there any way to assess that, I guess?
Are you saying that, can you say that again, to assess if you reach them like through outreach or on?
Through outreach or this overlay of, affected communities and the inequities, or is there an overlay or a way to say, all right, we've touched 80% of the people that are potentially touchable or fall
You
into
could
this?
include, usually we do optional demographic questions, so that's one way to try to get some more information.
I didn't just, that there's no perfect and.
Something we need to start doing is collecting data. I'm thinking that we got 32 applicants. Probably could say of the 32 applicants, this number percentage were low socioeconomic, this percentage was whatever the cases were. That
Some of them are like arboretum.
I realize that.
Right.
Hard to believe how low it
Right.
was socioeconomic. Well, it would be in that.
Yeah.
So I mean, my point is that if that's a goal, that when the data when it comes in, that's how you start figuring out who you're serving or you collect the data up front and then.
We could also, this is what they do with AmeriCorps. If you receive the grant, you have to track who is benefiting from the grant itself, right? So like, if you receive $7,500 and you do a handful of community events, like who attends the events,
Like the Arboretum did, they showed
Yeah.
pictures of them, yeah.
yeah, and so, in terms of like who we're reaching, are we reaching 80% feels very ambitious, but.
I just kind of 80-20 rule applies to a lot of things, and so I.
Well, but then when you look at the list of people that they're talking about who are underserved,
Mhm.
it's just about everybody. There are
Yeah.
people in there who are over 65, although it just says older people. I'm assuming that you go from 65, and there are people who have hearing problems and seeing problems and low literacy. But when you looked at the pictures of the people that went to the seed issues at the Arboretum, they're mostly Caucasians, but there were several elderly people, there are a couple of people in wheelchairs. I mean, it's not just a race issue. It's not just that.
Okay.
I think you have agenda items left, so I will.
Yeah, just a couple, but obviously there's a lot more to talk about. We have been, I'll be out of town next month, so we had been toying with the idea of canceling the main meeting, but I don't know, I want to check in now. It required also checking in with other staff members and their availability. Like, do we want to keep talking about this as a full commission, or do we feel ready to talk about it as a working group and then the working group
in all cases, for a working group, will then bring all of that work back to a full commission meeting at some point. That would probably be in June.
I think that the answer to that question hinges on whether anybody is interested in participating in a working group.
Because the reason, just background, part of the reason we decided to do this together as a commission is because it sounded like it would take a lot of time outside of the commission meeting. So it might be a heavy lift for a working group to go through this. I don't know what the average amount of time a working group it spends. We spent, the only working group I've ever participated on was a nice amount, like it was several hours. I spent some hours on my own, and then we met as a working group a couple times or twice, yeah. So it was, it was some amount of hours, but it was spread out, and it was, it felt reasonable.
I would expect this would be way more hours than what we did.
I would expect that too, based on how this. So anyway, that's why we decided to do it here. I also recognize that we didn't make a lot of progress tonight, but we had great discussions, so I don't.
Clarity and purpose. We haven't discussed exactly what our goal is with this. I mean, we're even looking at assessments that have nothing to do with our grants. I mean, and
Well, those are examples.
well, examples,
Help
but
us.
Sorry, that was
I kind of
confusing because those
It's so
were the-
closely aligned.
I know, I thought, oh,
Someone did this for me.
how many percentages there were of renters? And they, okay, that is no.
So is anybody interested in serving on a working group for this?
And I do have a comment first.
Okay.
I think it would be really helpful if there is any data to answer like some of these questions that are posed. Kind of like what data, like maybe if staff was able to like put the data in the chart and then the commission could use it, I think that would help.
Do you mean on past applicants or community data?
I mean, I don't know.
Anything we have.
Well, probably both, yeah, because the community, if there's an inequity, okay, let's find it. And let's see who's being affected by it, and let's, focus on treating that. And you have the global kind of things. Flagstaff's not the same as Phoenix, obviously, or other places. So how do we make it really specific for us and benefit our communities the best, and knowing who exactly it is that we're trying to serve or, do this for. I mean, education's probably the most common denominator if you're looking for folks that are disaffected or disenfranchised, and, versus race or language or any of these other things. It kind of comes back to that.
Well, I'm back to, for a subcommittee to work, you have to have a specific clear goal for what they're supposed to achieve. Is it to describe steps to improve the application process? Is it to analyze the application and look for ways to improve it as a subcommittee? The generic looking at everything through these lenses is interesting, but it could be just the same kind of thing we just went through. It could be a big round robin. We have come up with all kinds of ideas, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. And that's where you start having people in a committee feeling like they're not achieving any goal and you're not happy with what they're trying to do.
I just want to hop in here. Like, I have like 10 ideas at least of like things we can do for this process, like to improve already, just based off this like first section. So I certainly am coming away with this, like feeling really glad that we have started this process.
Do you just want to do this again at another meeting and so we can have 10 more? No, I mean that seriously.
I mean,
If it's giving you feed, if it's giving you food for thought, and you're gonna be working with this, if we can be that as an advisory group to give you some suggestions, that makes a lot
I
of
think
sense.
I would like to hear other feedback on this as well, and knowing, like, do we want to have a May meeting, knowing that we probably want all of the materials to be done and like a tentative outreach plan for this coming cycle, probably the end of July.
Well, there's also, I think what you said is that we might skip the May's meeting, right? Because,
It's on the table.
Well,
I'll be out
yeah.
of town, but.
yeah, well, instead of canceling the meeting, we could continue this in the next meeting without Tia, and we could just tell her about our good ideas.
Give you more food for thought when you're not here.
She'll be all worried on vacation. No, what are they doing?
No, you wherever you are.
No, what is no?
I don't know, if Jenna, do you have time?
Vacation's all.
No zooming on vacations.
Jenna, are you available for the next time as well?
I am
You know.
pretty sure I am. I will double check, but I don't get to go on vacations this time of year.
I really like Commissioner Conkle's idea about kind of assembling a new version of this with some more information. Do your ideas for improving the process, like, do you think it would be advantageous for you to walk away from this and implement those ideas and come back with a different way to approach this where we might be able to be effective in one commission meeting? You, 83. So what I'm asking is, all these ideas that you said you have for improving the process, do you think that you could put something together in terms of like this lens, but like, instead of having examples, maybe pre-fill it with information related to the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant Program?
I mean, I was just talking about what we have talked about as a group here today.
Okay.
For the grant improvement.
Oh, the grant, okay.
In terms of outreach. and
Yeah,
groups
like
and who-
possibly like having Spanish materials and
For sure, for sure.
translation, sending a survey out,
Video.
a
Yeah,
video
yeah.
options, right?
Video.
Yeah,
And I think
so,
Noah kind of brought up, like, is there an opportunity to, not a working group, but even if you spent an hour before the next meeting of, and we can send you a blank one without examples of filling it out, and it could even be maybe two commissioners take one section, so maybe you're only doing one section and you come back to the next meeting, and then we can kind of roundtable, the people who did that section can share out, and then we can see if it sparks ideas from any other commissioners.
Commissioner Conkle's talking about though is that where you have under barrier, for example, there needs to be something from our particular.
Yes, but I was thinking you all, since I don't even know the grant program like you do,
I know the
could,
program, but I couldn't tell you what 32 people.
Well, just like some of the data, like Tia has it, but we don't have it. But like, you pulled up all of the neighborhoods that were served. And so the commission doesn't have
But it
that.
doesn't tell you what makeup of that.
that's the only demographic
Yeah,
right.
information we have, unless I looked at every single question, like dug into and pulled out the specifics, which I can do. I just like, no, that's gonna be like so much work. Because we don't ask about it.
Yeah.
and I think there's other things, like section 4 is barriers, like that isn't necessarily based off like past data. You can think, and we've kind of already talked about this, like, have you applied for a grant before? That could be a barrier. Is it in the language that you speak? Like, those type of things, I think you don't need data for that, but you know, the order could be, maybe we didn't start in a great order for effective conversations, but there are some other sections that I think you don't need data for.
Well, and if I can too, just real quick, I want you all to encourage you all to give yourself credit. This assessment is about the process. It is not necessarily about the results. This is a data collection in some ways, right? And then moving on. And we will continually do this, right? And we were all learning as we do this assessment too. So I just want to help you all kind of appreciate that y'all got a lot done today. And you did have a really interesting and I think fruitful conversation.
The suggestion for the next meeting then would, in my mind, would be that we have the application that was there and I couldn't pull it up on my iPad. So take that application and look at it relative to the question and maybe come up with some ideas. Is there something in the application that is a barrier? Is there something in the application that blah, blah, blah? And start looking at honing the application as opposed to, let's throw the whole thing out and try something all brand new. And although I like the video idea, I'm not saying that is part of it.
That was very good. Yeah, with the TikTok generation, I mean.
Yeah.
We might not have TikTok.
Is that your generation?
Those are the ones that are gonna benefit from all this conversation. That's the
Yes.
thing. I think, you know, like you were saying, if you're trying to
Do you have
get
Facebook?
demographics
Is there sustainability
across the
office
board,
Facebook?
it's like high schoolers. You know, high schoolers have not only cognitive function to maybe even apply to some of these, but they also hit all these socioeconomic strata that you're trying to get input from, and whether they can like group up as a group of high schoolers and they aren't adults, so they can't fill out this application because they're gonna get money. But if they're the ones that are gonna benefit from these down the way, then they should have some kind of equity within the younger scape, like you're saying, if you're trying to get younger, older, and then various different degrees, like that could be one, like all sciences and all classes. You have a presentation. Are they all gonna like sign up for a neighborhood sustainability camp? Probably not, but at least it's in front of them and they can take it to their parents and be like, hey, I really thought about this one thing I wanted to do. And then my last point, because I have to go meet my dad for dinner.
Can we come?
Unfortunately not tonight. But just the distribution of how they're given, I kind of went down to show the results of this last one at least. And it was 7 garden grower, and then 5 kind of distributed among other things. Just in the sense of like categoricals, maybe that's like a point offset or handicap that kind of gets distributed, because I think there's oftentimes that growing and waste get focused on in a lot of sustainability projects or sustainability kind of scoring, and then transportation and energy kind of fall to the wayside. So kind of maybe looking across that distribution of 32 and pre-categorizing that into the 7 potentials and seeing which ones were heavy last time or heavy from the ones before, and trying to make up for some of that, because I feel like too, the adjustment of, and I think what a lot of sustainability does and what you folks as commissions do, and I'm on other commissions and I understand the labor that we're doing and idea churning we're doing for some stuff, is meeting what the city is saying and what the messaging is saying, and then seeing that it's actually being implemented. And in particular, and I'll just speak to the last little bit of why I focus on transportation so much, is because walkable communities are much more open to everyone than centering on just how to alleviate traffic by transit. You're replacing transit and transportation by walkability and bikeability. And if you look at probably most of the messaging we all got for this past Earth Day, there is always a bicycle or several bicycles on any of those graphic images. And look through all of your documentation, like all of them will have that, but very little implementation of actually promoting and comfort to walkability and bicyclability is given to the general public. In a lot of the transportation grants I think you have, it's like the end result of transportation. So it's like a bike rack.
Mhm.
But there's nothing in between 2 bike racks. There's no programming, there's no assessment, there's no diversion of cars, there's no shutting down streets, there's no
But that,
repurposing parking lots.
that's something that the city does, and it's not necessarily something individuals in the community do.
But it can be at least implemented through grant funding to ideas that are outside of just food growing. And just like, I mean, we can take a quick, how many people drove in single occupant cars to this meeting as a sustainability meeting?
In my hybrid.
Yeah, in a hybrid, but that's still a car centric thing. Like, did anybody take the bus?
Okay, so we have to make a goal.
No hands up, anybody bike?
Now, what is,
We
does
got
the
2
bus run at
cyclists.
6:30 to my house? Will it get me home tonight?
I mean, that's something that can be asked for the mountain line. You can also take an Uber, like, which is what a lot of people who can't afford cars, that's often told to them, which you just told me. Oh, can you just take an Uber to somebody who got off work, let's say,
Yeah,
working in a place where they're barely making ends meet and they can't catch a 10:30 bus. And then it's like, hey, just take an Uber for $20 to, wherever they go, where there's affordable housing, which is far outside of downtown Flagstaff or.
Roofers during the week are more expensive.
Roofers during the week are more expensive. So just the consideration of if you're breaking these into the general climate messages, which are often what I see is, local resiliency, generally food, energy and housing. That's kind of a general. There's always a big transportation block that says you want less car dependence, but there's very few projects that ever address car dependence. Very, very few. So just consider that when you see some of these things, that looking at past applications of past award winners, we have the chart of what was applied. Just because they're not necessarily fully fledged out or a little bit outside of the scoring rubric, maybe you can throw in a couple just to see if they do have any kind of impact in implementation into the future. And that's another thing too, is some people who don't write grants all the time might not hit all the levels they can, but if you can see the broader general idea of what they're hoping that the future holds for that idea, giving them the benefit of the doubt sometimes because they might not be able to explain exactly what it is because it is such a unknown in the future. And to work within that, because we often write grants for tangible things like, oh, you bought stuff, right? You bought equipment, you bought materials, you have receipts, right? Where there's a lot of stuff that's intangible for some of these things, like we're saying, only 50% can be given to people's compensation or skills or anything like that. It's like people are working at these things, you know, I mean, the grant writer and the organization should be able to get some kind of compensation for what they're doing, even if they're not necessarily the people who are the implementers of what's going on in the grant. Some kind of time consideration is also helpful, just again, in an equity lens. It's like, sometimes you have a grant writing committee that can do these things. And then oftentimes for these small grassroots people, they're doing it in between work shifts, they're doing it in between childcare, they're doing it in between school, all those kind of things. So giving them grace, giving them a little bit of space to consider some of those things. And then also, again, always looking back at your lens of the categorization of strata of what you're looking at. Because I agree fully, and I would never think that funding food production is a bad thing. But I also see the chart that there's not a lot, that's a heavy spike compared to some of those should be a little bit equalized, because the broader sense of the climate impact and the climate catastrophe that we're going through is very multifaceted, and we're not just going to grow our way out of it. We've got to implement some systemics that take on other things that we do. And it's also a cultural idea that we're getting to. And on just last point on transportation, you have to give people a cultural exchange. So what happens with transportation is when people talk about it in sustainability, they think that you're saying automatically, I'm getting rid of my car. You're coming from my car. You're going to burn my car. You're going to take it away. You're going to get it out of here. Nowhere does any multimodal person think that cars are going away. That's not happening. However, there needs to be certain implemented steps that make every other form of transportation equally as accessible, equally as comfortable, equally as enticing to use, because we default to the car because nothing else is comfortable. We feel dangerous all the time. And also looking at the places where you can just defend pedestrianism. Why is NAU an easy place to bike and walk? It's because they've designed it to do that thing. So if you want people to use walking spaces and biking spaces, you have to put in implementation to tell them to feel comfortable there. And if you give them a cultural exchange, like say, hey, I know you're scared about there not being parking, but what if I give you an entire street where you can just walk, where you don't even have to look, you don't even have to check both ways from a car? And that's a cultural exchange to get people not to think, oh, I can give up my car right away, but you gave them a cultural experience to say, hey, remember, you know how we go to the farmers market every weekend and the first thing they do is shut down a parking lot and shut down a street? Isn't that pretty cool? What if we tried to shut down other streets? for neighborhoods? What if we tried to shut down the street in front of a park so that we don't have to worry about our kids getting? What if we have a bunch of merchants that want to set up in another street? So just a broader sense.
How do you
That
build
we
that
can
into the
consider.
grants, though? You're gonna have to give us information about how to build that into a grant. How the community
Into a
itself-
grant?
How the community itself builds that concept.
Yeah, yeah. I want to point out, thank you so much.
Yes.
That's all, I agree with everything you said, really important, but one point I want to make, and then we're closing this out, is I did notice that there were a lot of applications in the food area last year. And so that's another, like, it would be good to see that graph up there against the data of how many applications we got in each category. So I
Maybe
agree.
That's part of who we're reaching.
Right,
We're
right.
not reaching
That speaks to,
People.
yeah, to be doing those kinds of
So,
projects.
so that's a good data point that we could use, is like what the categories are that we're getting the applications.
We have 100%
Awesome.
of transportation applications. So
So-
one guy that applied for transportation, I got it.
We also, in the past, we have given like a merit point to some different categories that were under applied.
Right.
I think that fell off last time, and maybe we could consider bringing it back for the next round.
Yeah.
This information.
Okay.
Thank you for
Yeah,
listening.
thanks for coming.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Good to see
Thank you
you.
for doing the work too. I know it's a lot of conversations. and-
Stay here until,
I'm sorry.
do you mind? Cause like, okay.
Oh,
You got to go, I forgot.
That's okay.
There's no requirement, there's no requirement.
That right back down.
It's a personal thing. If you're gonna come back, then, you know my brother. So,
Yes, that's what I thought it was.
So-
And I was like,
so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
is, but yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, have dinner with your dad, we'll see you some
Yeah,
other time.
Yeah, I might be back again.
Bring it, yeah, keep it, I think. To the next one.
Thanks
Oh,
again.
there's no way.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
articulate.
What do we need to resolve? Tia, can you help guide us in terms of what we need to resolve to move on, and tie this up?
Let's just work on it in May.
So you won't be here, but
Okay.
I'm still working.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And
Okay.
that could be the agenda for the meeting.
Yeah.
You will, love it. If you want to look at it in your free time, you can, you do not have to.
the grant rubric, or is that gonna be something that's available?
It's attached to
It's
the
in
agenda.
It's attached to this agenda? or-
No, in the agenda.
Oh, it's one of those
Yeah,
links.
the Tia sent out.
No, but enough.
You have to click a couple links in, but yeah.
There were like 4 of them, yeah, and I looked at all of them, but I didn't even see
And
the.
I would just ask that when we come back for the May meeting, that we have the data, for how many applications we got in each category.
And
That would be awesome.
We'll do.
Okay. Fantastic.
Zooming in and
So, do we need to vote that the May meeting is not canceled because it says
No.
canceled on here?
No.
No? That'll be in the
Clerk's office, and it's just
Okay.
like an announcement to cancel it.
Okay, I move the table to and from, or cancel to and from, because we're out of time.
Sounds good. Okay, really quick, happy hour next Thursday if you're available.
Okay.
New commissioners, you're invited, even though you didn't know Kevin.
Yeah.
He's really great. He would love to meet you and
Also, just.
see
together.
the figures.
No. We can buy you snacks. We'll buy you snacks.
Yeah.
See, you like my snacks.
That was that dark sky?
Thank you.
Then if we take a bus, do we get extra points and get a better drink or something? Can you give us a beer if we
You
take
get a better
bus to it?
snack. The city can't.
Full
Well,
pretzel.
I can't drink and drive, so I may be taking a bus if I do drink.
Okay, do we have any future agenda requests? Hey, it sounds like we know what we're working on. Okay, do I have to move to adjourn? Or can I just, do I just adjourn? This is my first time
Yeah.
hearing.
You can't tell. Doing great.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Really great conversation. You know how to apply.
Yeah,
after-
that's right. Do I?
Oh, freshman.
After all.
Got it.
Like that.
How
long do you have to live in the city before you can be on the commission? Is it 6 months?
Ooh, I think 0.
Oh, really? Okay, never mind, you can apply right now. Do you live in city limit?
Thanks.
Okay. I think that's, yeah. Great.
So put your name in.
Oh.
Want me to English Vanilla?
Meetings are light, yeah, yeah.